Alright everyone, here we are, less than 1 month away from PlayStation 5 actually coming out, and Sony has finally showed us what the user interface looks like. This was the last thing we were really waiting for when it came to major PS5 news, so we saw the system menus, some features, a lot of it was explained, a lot of it we didn't see, but we'll go over everything we learned today and of course some impressions. So this is actually considered a state of play, and normally we get notice of state of plays before they drop, although this time around we had an idea that something might happen today based off the fact that earlier in the week we had Burger King restaurants, yes, the fast food chain Burger King restaurants, send out a tweet from their main account teasing some sort of tie-in with Sony for PlayStation 5, and in that video you can hear the PS5's startup UI noise more or less, and this was the same noise that we heard from the PS5 Future of Gaming event, so we already knew that was the user interface. Many people took this to think that, okay, October 15th we'll have the UI reveal. Now obviously Burger King themselves was not going to reveal the user interface, and it really is just a promotional tie-in on their front, so they will be doing a giveaway of consoles if you go to Burger King restaurants and order through the mobile app. But either way, we did get this state of play randomly showing the UI. So in this video, it opens up with the SIA Senior Vice President of Platform Planning Management, Hideaki Nishino, where he says, your playtime is valuable and should be meaningful. So let's recap all the features and what we're actually looking at here. So to start off, the console's initial sign-in screen is similar to PS4 in that it asks you who's using the controller, and from there you can add a new user, access options for the currently selected user, or access console power settings. Logging in, the initial screen we see is Sackboy Big Adventure running in the background, and this current view we're actually looking at here is called the Control Center. So it has accessibility options on the very bottom there. You can quickly access things like parties, controller settings, downloads, things like that. But the main panels you're looking at are called cards, and these are your contextual options for games or system features like the first card here, Official News. This card would show you news for games from publishers you're actively following, and presumably games that you own from your own personal library. The following cards are contextual to the game currently suspended, so in this case being Sackboy Big Adventure, you can see a recent screenshot you took, but to the right is where Sony calls these cards activities. Removing the barrier to gameplay, activities show you levels and objectives you're currently working on or haven't even started yet. There's a percentage for your current progress and even an estimated time to completion. Selecting an activity will provide more info on multiple objectives or even allow you to jump to that section of the game very quickly. Now, looking back at the activity card, you can see the light bulbs with the PS Plus logos. This is a new PS Plus feature for members, allowing you to see hints or video guides for that specific objective. So you can play a video guide right there, or do a side-by-side view, or even picture-in-picture. And you can pin cards to easily reference it again. And this is all happening while Sackboy Big Adventure is suspended in the background. In the top right, we see a notification for a voice chat, which can be accessed very quickly from a quick tap from the PlayStation button, and you can join the party immediately without leaving the game. We can also see in the top right someone has begun sharing their screen. Again, with a quick tap of the PS button, you can start watching their screen, or pin it, or use picture-in-picture for this as well. Now, back to the Control Center, we can see cards for Trophy Progress and joinable matches for Destruction All-Stars. Clicking this shows the party playing the game, the date it was created, and also compatible versions of this game. However, for Destruction All-Stars, in this case, it's PlayStation 5 only. We can see the game start from a fresh boot and get to the main menu in a matter of seconds. This would have been a great opportunity for us to finally see Destruction All-Stars gameplay, but for now they actually fast forward through this so they can take a screenshot. And screenshots and video can be captured in 4K, and PS5, much like PS4, is always capturing recent gameplay. Now, back to Control Center again, we can see activities associated with Destruction All-Stars now being available over what was previously there for Sackboy Big Adventure. On the bottom, you can see the option to go home, and when selected, this is where we see the PS5's main home screen with multiple different applications. On the far right, we can see options for things like Remote Play, PS Now, PS Plus, and scrolling down over a game takes you to that title's hub. This is where we can see things like Trophy Progress, DLC, recent screenshots, but also activities like we just saw in the Control Center. So remember, these are quick links to specific moments in a game, and this is important because this is now the hub menu. These options would appear and be accessible even if the game isn't suspended. PS4 games will also have access to some of these hub features, but it isn't made entirely clear what would be available. I'd imagine it would pull some of the same metadata that we see on PS4 currently, so trophy data, DLC, shared screenshots, nothing super exciting there, but you'll still have some of that information for PS4 games available on PS5. And next up is the Explore tab. Now this is where you'll see official news news from Sony and the games you own and follow. This will be available only in the US at launch, and other territories will follow shortly after. On the far left is the PlayStation Store, and it's integrated right into the user interface, so it's no longer a separate app, and it will be more tailored to you. To end off, Control Center is brought back up again to access the card for sharing a recent screenshot, and here we can see the option to edit the photo, but it's shared right away to parties, with an option for Twitter being accessible, and a message is added, and here we can see voice dictation. And remember, a connected mic is not necessary. This can be done right from the DualSense's mic. Something pretty noteworthy about screenshots, though: if you send a screenshot or a video that the developer thinks it might be a spoiler for their game to the other user, a warning will be sent to your friends before they actually open your attachment, so that's actually very handy. Then the power menu is brought up, and we can see the option for rest mode, which, much like PS4, can charge controllers, download updates, and suspend games, and like PS4, do not turn off the PS5 or pull the power cord out, anything like that. You want to make sure that it goes completely into rest mode, and then you're all good to go. Now, over on Eurogamer, speaking with Digital Foundry, we do have a quote here from SI's Hideaki Nishino where he says, "So, with the PS5 user interface, we are reimagining the way the game works together with the hardware and the network, delivering a truly next-generation experience. The UX is completely centered around the player, and we're connecting players with gameplay and a passionate community of gamers, so that's the philosophy. We worked on this over the last several years, and got together and as a single team across London, the United States, and Tokyo, and we are happy to show you the result of that." Now, we do have some minor additional details that Digital Foundry was able to pry out here. There's not a whole lot, but basically Sony isn't telling us how much system resources are allocated to these features. Things like quickly resuming games, using picture-in-picture, the entry points for activities. They just mention it's a similar amount to PlayStation 4. There is a heavy amount of cash being used for some of these internet-heavy features, like the PlayStation Store being baked right into the user interface. So a lot of this stuff is loaded ahead of time and saved right then and there for a lot of these points that might be more dependent and contingent on your actual internet speeds. And for those curious, Digital Foundry was also able to confirm that game discs can be played offline, so if there were any sort of concerns about new DRM or always online connected policies for the potential of not being able to play games offline, that's not going to be a thing here. So you can still buy a game offline and play it just as it would come before patches or anything like that. So with all that said, let's go over how we really feel about what we saw today, and I guess a good place to start would be just the timeline of what built up to this moment, of course, because this is the last major thing that we were waiting for with PS5, and a lot of what we saw today really vibes back to some of the previous videos where we've been discussing what this user interface is going to look like, generally speaking, and a lot of what I knew about the user interface before this formal reveal did end up making it to this presentation, so things like the tracking progress for things like trophies, but also just general activities. Obviously, those quick links to games, that was one of the very first items we ever knew about PS5, and that was public information. Video guides, I knew about this, and so it's nice to see how this really ends up looking. But we had initially some UI leaks from what appeared to be a PlayStation 5 dev kit, where it looked more like a PlayStation 4, or had that PlayStation 4 disguise masked over it, and there are certain pictures you can look at where you can make some easy comparisons of where this UI started in the very early 0.0 whatever version of the firmware, right? The very early iterations of it. Then we saw some patents where, again, you can see the general look and feel of how it's a little more layered compared to PlayStation 4. And then we had a recent patent that really showed us a better look at what this could look like. And it's highly specific to games. So I think that's the big takeaway here with this user interface. Well, first off, just the presentation of this particular video I found a little bit strange, because it starts off with the control center, which really is more of a quick menu. It's hard to get an idea of what was the main screen of PlayStation 5 until the later point of this video, and really we don't even see what this home screen looks like without hovering over an icon that doesn't take over the entire screen. So that's something that I also was a little curious about seeing, if it was more of that, you know, amber glow and finish that we saw from well, the initial boot up screen, right? You would think that that might be the main theme that takes over, but really, no matter what application you're hovering over, that would take priority. Or if you're in the control center and you've got a game suspended, you're going to see the application behind it. But either way, applications are blown up, and so this is a design characteristic we've seen with a lot of user interfaces on TV streaming applications and things like that. It's all about blowing up the content, and all the information, like text, for example, is smaller in relation to the images, and so that's obviously very prominent here. But it's great to see things like the progress tracking, side-by-side view for videos. I mean, the video guides is a little strange in that this is, I guess, one of my concerns with this user interface is just that there are certain highly specific things in here that are dependent on the developer and dependent on who's even in charge of those video guides, if it's really trying to pull data from specific key moments from wherever those videos are being sourced from. But this UI really is all about getting you back in your game and valuing your time. And so that's why it was so great to see a fresh start for something like Destruction All-Stars. Now, it's still laughable that we did not see gameplay for this. In fact, this would have been a perfect opportunity to show a little bit of it. It didn't have to be a full match. I mean, this is a video that's going to get a lot of attention because it's the first look at the user interface, so we could have saw some Destruction All-Stars, just saying. But we saw a fresh start of a game, a PlayStation 5 game, and it was a matter of seconds. That was great. That was right from the card, too, as well. So you get an idea of, the usability of this platform and how you might interact with it over time. But what's so prominent is those cards and those activities. So when you go to the control center, this would be the area on, say, PS4 where it would be your quick menu, right? If you want to easily access things like audio, controller settings, your parties, things like that. I mean, these really feel like an afterthought on the initial glance of this UI because it's on the bottom, they're small icons. What's so prominent are those cards and activities. That's the thing that Sony really wants you to look at and engage with, and these are developer dependent. And so it's not going to look like this for every single game like we're seeing with Sackboy Big Adventure, or even that small glance we saw with Destruction All-Stars. And these are PlayStation Studio titles that are going to be highly encouraged to take advantage of these features. And so I would love to see what this looks like for third parties, because that's going to be where a lot of people are going to be engaging and playing content. We all love PlayStation exclusives, but that's not all you're going to be exclusively playing. You're going to be playing games from second and third party. They're not going to be under Sony's PlayStation Studios, and so how often will developers take advantage of these features? We can look at PlayStation 4 with the share button and screenshots and your capture gallery and share factory. I mean, these are things that a lot of people just don't use. They're great, but you don't have to use them, and they're not really in your face about it either. Whereas on PlayStation 5, these are in your face. You use Control Center for the important features like changing controllers, messing with your audio settings, right? Friends list, party chat. I mean, these feel like an afterthought versus what is so clearly displayed in front of you, being the cards and activities. So it's not even to say that developers won't use these things, but it's just important to understand that the example we're seeing is not going to be the one-size-fits-all for every other game, right? Some developers may just have a few cards for, oh, here's single player, here's multiplayer. So you can jump right to that or right to this. Maybe there'll be a card for just jumping to a specific save file, maybe multiple save files. That would certainly be very handy. Different lobbies for multiplayer. I mean, these are things that you would think, okay, makes sense, but the developer would have to use it. I just hope it becomes more commonplace. And remember, when you select an activity, there's even more details within that card there. And so there's obviously a lot that can be put into this. It's just a matter of what we'll end up seeing across the board, and certainly over time is most important. I think at launch you're going to see a lot of the stuff get used. That's commonplace, really, whether it's a more genuine feature that really helps the quality of life on the platform, or if it appears more of a gimmick that the platform holder's trying to push long term. These things will get used. All of it will get used day one, but what will come out on top over time, and this is where we'll see PlayStation 5 evolve with further firmware updates. So granted, there's a lot that we didn't see about this walkthrough. I mean, there's a lot of sections we didn't see, and that's understandable, of course. They even note that this is a very, it's an earlier build, so there's things that are subject to change. Sony's trying to cover their tracks there, but this will be our initial experience with PlayStation 5, and over time, that will change based on user feedback. Now, this is also notable because we just had firmware 8.0 drop on PlayStation 4 where it changed the party system. So now you have to set up a group and then invite players through that, and it's a huge pain. A lot of people have really been upset about this, but of course, looking at what we know with PlayStation 5 and how these consoles are going to be talking back and forth to one another, this is really the direction that they're going in so far. And so while you may not be very happy with how it works on PlayStation 4 right now, this is where they're going with it. And so, at least for PlayStation 5 as a brand new console, you know that a lot of what we see right now is subject to change, maybe not in the short term, but certainly in the long term, and that might also reflect some PlayStation 4 updates. But anyway, I know this sounds like a lot of criticisms. It's really not quite like that, because we knew a lot of these features going into it. So it was really more a matter of how is it going to be presented, because that is an important part. And the key thing here is that you can't force certain features over time, right? It's only a matter of player habits and what actually ends up being really useful to the player. You can't force certain things. It's a matter of over time somebody going, oh, that was super handy, I'll do this again, I'll use it again, and then just you find yourself always using it every single time you play your PlayStation 5, right? That's why the user experience is so important, and it's one that I've been really excited to see, because I love the XMB. I think the PlayStation 4 dynamic menu was also great. Serviceable, it wasn't my favorite, but you know, it's a big part of your overall interaction with the platform over a long period of time if you plan on buying and owning your PS5 and it being your main source of playing games for many years to come, right? So this is an important part, and that's why something like Day 1 and even this video where it doesn't show us everything is a little hard to judge, because you just don't know how you'll end up interacting with it over time, and that's why things like firmware updates will change the overall usability of the platform and highlight the features that people care about, and maybe stow away some of the features that people aren't really engaging with too much, or potentially removing them entirely. That's the whole point of these over-the-air updates for these internet connected boxes, and that's what's so handy about them. But overall, I think it looks slick, it's fast, and that's the most important thing is speed here, being able to quickly get to your content, jumping between applications, those fast boot times. I mean, you know, we've beaten the dead horse here, but it's a massive quality of life improvement. And so at the end of the day, if you don't care about all these features, the one thing that you will love, and it will make it hard to go back to PlayStation 4, PS3 games, PS2, is going to be the accessibility of getting to this content and actually playing games and skipping past all those traditional load screens that we've been dealing with for the better part of over 2 decades. Anyway, that's it for this news update. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't yet, please subscribe for the best PlayStation news, reviews, and updates that are here on YouTube. You can follow me on Twitter at Mystic Ryan, and I will see you tomorrow for Let's Talk PlayStation. We still have tons of news stories to go over, so I'll see you then. You take it easy.